Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Well, the second Modern Warfare 2. We're here on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So diving into this experience, we'll be talking first about the campaign, and then secondly about the multiplayer experience that is provided here on the Series S console. So right off the bat, what are we getting here? It is 1440p at 60 FPS, but it's like a dynamic reconstruction type technique that is being used within the game in order to provide that. There's also a... what the heck? Anyways, there's also a higher frame rate option, which is like 1080p, similar dynamic reconstruction, 120 FPS target, though you're probably getting a lot less, kind of like 90 FPS or something like that. So cool, we have other options within the settings. FOV, there's third person in this game as well, so you can adjust those settings when the modes provide it. Campaign is, just straight up, FPS. And there's motion blur option changes, film grain, depth of field. Then we have the Fidelity FX CAS. So this is a sharpening kind of improvement technology that you can kind of use. I think people that sort of turn off the blur effects will find this to be something they enjoy. But yeah, it's going to be one of those, your mileage will vary based on your particular interest in that sort of setting. There's HDR support and on-demand texture streaming if you want to, keep the quality even higher. There's also mouse and keyboard settings, or at least there was when we were playing on the Series X version, so that's interesting. And yeah, let's dive in and talk about this experience and what it has to offer gameplay-wise. So this is following up after the events of Modern Warfare 2019. We have the expanded crew, so a lot of returning faces if you played the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare franchise. The good old lads, so Price, everybody's here kind of having fun with some new faces, and a returning face or so from the Modern Warfare 2019 campaign. So structurally, this one is, as typically, a bunch of loosely thrown together events where you connect, battle, and eliminate foes. It kind of almost exactly mirrors the structure story. I can't believe I actually died there, taking this way too casually. It kind of mirrors the story structuring from the original Modern Warfare experience back in the day, like Modern Warfare 2. It does feel a lot smaller in terms of stakes and or content, and a little, to me, sillier. So I think this really could be, the best COD, or perhaps one of the best CODs they've ever done, just in terms of the franchise. But when I look at the campaign experience, I do actually find the campaign to be one of the weaker, or the weak part of this package. It kind of borders on being silly at times. The first few levels are absolutely fantastic. They set the stage, they kind of create intrigue and mystery. There's like a Gillies in the Mist thing, which is kind of cool. But there's a certain point where it just becomes really, really comically silly. Like you're diving or jumping from like 30 different cars to like chase this convoy, and you're doing like laps. There's the alone mission, which is like arts and crafts Call of Duty with like an injured soap, and it's just really, really poorly put together in that regard. That level is terrible. And then there's arts and crafts later on, which is a little silly. And it's just like a lot of the levels just kind of seem really, again, low stakes and then a bit funny in what they provide. Like after you finish the story and you look back at the different levels, you kind of go, huh, that was kind of okay. And again, I do think this is actually one of the weaker campaigns in the Call of Duty franchise. It's, it's got some cool moments, but there's nothing like really exciting or intensive. When you played the original Modern Warfare franchise, there was a lot of really big, boom-tastic moments that were exciting and fun and dynamic and different, with great twists and changes. And this story does have some fun little curves and turns and twists to it, but it doesn't quite feel like it's at the same level that the original Modern Warfare, 2 provided. It seems just not quite as well structured and designed. And, the missions are linear in nature. They do have some fun scenes where you're blasting things and shooting stuff, and it shows off the new mechanics. And, it is a very, very beautiful looking game. Visually it's quite striking. But on the Series S, obviously, it is a little lower res in a lot of areas than I'm used to with, say, the Series X, which is what I primarily play on. So you are definitely noticing a visual quality downgrade in regards to like character models, environmental models, some of the loading of some textures and whatnot. And you know what? It still looks really, really good. Like, this is a visually stunning kind of game. Just on the Series S, it's not quite as detailed, but you still get the same level of like geometry, texturing, design, you know, world environment, everything like that. It's all here. It's not like it's scaled down or anything. It just doesn't look as visually impressive. But it still looks really, really damn good. There's this Amsterdam level, and it's a true showcase of like just how good this title can actually look. But I find a lot of the lower resolution elements are going to pop up more if you're playing on like a 4K type screen, particularly sort of when you do like zoom in moments in the distance and whatnot. It definitely seems like that visual degrading is certainly more present. And I also notice that a lot more in the multiplayer aspect of things. So, I mean, obviously we'll talk about that more when we go over the multiplayer portion of the experience that is present. So yeah, the campaign, it has its moments, it's fun, you know, I think a lot of people are really, really going to enjoy it. For me, it didn't quite hit the mark as being as exciting or as great as I had hoped. Like, you still get some cool moments here or there, you get some good character-driven segments, but it just seems really kind of small in terms of the scale. It doesn't really seem like they're quite pushing things from a narrative standpoint to the same degree. You've got this whole cartel type element, there's some checkpoints that are a little kind of poorly done, you know, some little like AI things where it's like the AI are kind of doing some dumb stuff. And I felt like they could have went a little bit grander in nature. And there was a lot of like nostalgia points where it's like, hey, remember this moment from the other Call of Duties? Haha. And it's just kind of like, you know, some people, I think that hypes things up. But for me, I kind of look at that and I'm like, that's a bit silly. And yeah, I don't really love when they do that sort of thing if it's not done quite right. It just seems like a step down from the 2019 campaign, because I found that one to be really striking and really intensive and really gritty and just crazy. I can't believe where was I getting even shot from? And I remember it being a lot more, you know, intensive and exciting compared to what we're getting here. And to me, you know, that's really disappointing because they had such a good starting point. And it's not like this is like a bad campaign. It's very, very average, but it's kind of forgettable in that regard, if that makes sense. And there's so many armored dudes. So many armored folks. It's just like bizarre, the quantity of armored enemies that you're dealing with. There are difficulty options for you to work through if you want to have something a bit more challenging. But yeah, going back to that element of just kind of like some of the stuff being silly, like there's a cargo ship level where cargo's moving back and forth, that's annoying. Again, doing like all the weird crafting stuff in COD didn't make any sense to me. Sometimes the AI would be hyper-focused, other times the AI didn't seem to know what they were doing. It's just like kind of weirdly inconsistent in that regard. And I don't know if some things just stick out to me more as time goes on and whatnot, but I kind of look at it and it just seems like a pale comparison to if you're comparing against the original series. And I know that this is a new franchise, but it also feels a step down from that 2019 Modern Warfare where I was like, wow, like, you know, every moment of that campaign was just intense and gripping and exciting, and the characters were neat. And this one, I'm like, you know, there's this long mission where I'm jumping from like car to car to car and driving cars, and I was just kind of like, this is a little stupid. And then there's like the, you know, the AC-130 levels, really cool because you can actually see a little less on the Series S, but you can see the detail of like characters. Like you can be like, wow, that's actually like Price down there on the ground. You can actually like see that, and it's like, whoa, that was cool. At the same time, I found that level a little slow and boring. They just didn't let you blow things up, which is what an AC level is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about destruction and whatnot. I don't know if I got enough jump on that one. I did, that's good. But yeah, you know, I think there's stuff to enjoy here. I think the first part of the campaign is really well structured. I just do think that it kind of structurally falls apart a bit, and it doesn't have very many stakes, and it just kind of feels like a mid-gap towards something else from a story perspective. So I'm hoping that we see the next entry, I think, you know, maybe up things up a bit, or maybe we'll get a campaign down the road that expands this as we're, you know, for the first time in a 2-year kind of COD cycle. Who knows what's going to happen? But for now, I'm kind of a little bit, you know, solid campaign, but not really a campaign that, you know, exceeded expectations or was as intense or chilling as what had come prior. And that, to me, is a little disappointing. So this is the multiplayer portion of the experience. You may be skipping along to this, so in general, just for campaign, I thought it was solid. But the multiplayer here is where this game absolutely just thrives. This is possibly the best multiplayer in the entirety of the Call of Duty franchise. I think COD 4 personally for me has been the best, the staple of the series since it came out, you know, in terms of the innovation and what it provided. But I am absolutely just loving what they've accomplished here with this particular multiplayer experience as I stun myself. Hilarious. But yeah, no, they've really, really hit the mark here. I think it's fun, it's engaging, it's exciting, and the pacing is just perfect. It's not really like, it's about rushing around, it's about fast movement like Call of Duty is supposed to be. But I don't feel like I'm in a panic like Vanguard where it's like, go, 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 go. This feels well-paced, well set up, and it's just really, really exciting to play. I think they've just absolutely provided a phenomenal multiplayer setup here that I am loving. I've got well over 20-something hours of like streamed multiplayer action going on, and it's really, really good. Now, obviously, when we come to the Series S, you know, we're getting a much lower resolution, so it's not as sharp as I'm used to, but I still think it looks really, really great here on the Series S. Seriously, the amount of detail within the environments, the quality of the maps, everything like that is fantastic. Now, if you do want to go for the higher frame rate mark, which we'll show a little bit of at the end of the video, you know, that in itself feels really, really good. Now, you're not getting, like, necessarily the full 120 FPS action that you would kind of hope for, but, you know, going beyond 60 FPS and getting even up to 90, getting towards 120 FPS, I think is a fantastic, good competitive advantage, and it feels really, really nice to play. And I think that is definitely something nice that they offered for this particular title, is even getting close to that. With that aside, you know, playing it regularly at this, like, you know, 40, 60 kind of level, I think quality-wise it does look pretty sharp, it does look pretty good, the environments are well rendered, well realized, and it's great to enjoy. Now, going back to the multiplayer, we have a couple different ways to play. So obviously we're doing the traditional competitive, like 6v6. There's also larger multiplayer action, so that's Ground War and Invasion. Ground War plays a little bit like Conquest from like Battlefield, where you're capturing posts, killing enemies, getting points. Then there's the Invasion mode, which is more like just big random team deathmatch type thing, you know, big random open combat. These play across a few different maps, which are quite large in scale, and I believe cut perhaps from the future Warzone that we're going to see, because down the road they're adding like a raid mode, they're adding a, you know, like the Warzone 2.0. We'll have separate reviews for those at that point, but I consider the campaign and the multiplayer having been released to be the point of review for this particular, you know, for what a Call of Duty experience is to me. But we definitely will be talking about those other modes later on down the road. So, yeah, past that, we have another mode. It's not just all this stuff. There's also a co-op mode. So I'm considering that part of the multiplayer because you play with, you know, another player. And what you're doing there is you're doing these 3 different missions that take about 20 minutes or so to play. And they range from, like, holding this position of, like, a remake of Dome from, like, Modern Warfare franchise, if you remember Dome. That's one. They also seem like they're carved out of perhaps Warzone as well. But then there's one where you're like doing SAM sites, another you're controlling points. Like, they're 3 different missions. I won't play them again, but, you know, they're interesting, right? Like, there's something else that you can enjoy and play within the experience, which I think is good. So that's the co-op. Kind of neat, worth a play, but after that, eh. So let's talk about the regular traditional multiplayer, which just feels fantastic. The biggest changes here are kind of the unlock system. So perks have a progressional match sort of leveling to them, if that makes any sense. As you play the game, you'll kind of get an idea of that. So it's like a progression during matches. You see your perks kind of like improve and whatnot, which is, it's different, you know, they're trying new things. Then there's the gun kind of unlocking system. So like, you have to use family trees of guns in order to unlock additional guns within certain families of trees, or different guns to unlock gun skins for different other guns. It sounds convoluted, it definitely is. I don't love it, but, you know, it's something different, so I don't mind it. But yeah, gameplay-wise, it just feels right. There's a great selection of maps, and they're new levels, like they're different play spaces, and they've got such a neat style to them because they're not all necessarily large, but yet there's like this neat sense of like depth within them, different rooms. Speaking of that, if you play Ground War or Invasion, those maps, you can literally go in like almost every room inside of like decently tall buildings, which is fascinating that we're getting to that point. But yeah, going back to this, it just like the use of space seems so well. The varied level designs, the quantity of levels. There's only one level I don't like, and it's this like border crossing type thing with the cars that explode. It's annoying. I don't like that one. But every other map is really, really well done. They're all creative. I love the hotel map the most. That one is my absolute favorite. Just like also like the geometry level and like the looks of the maps are so good to play. Absolutely just love what they've done with this game. Just in terms of like, you know, the development of it and the style of it. Really, really good multiplayer. They've also given us new move mechanics, so you can dolphin dive or you can slide. That's right, you can do both now. This is what next gen gaming's all about. And these are your contextual leaning. So you can like, it really feels like you play this competitively and tactically. And it feels like it's accessible for different types of players. Like Ground War, I think, is really, really good for more like casual type players with larger spaces, whereas the regular play here even, I think, is fairly accessible just in terms of how well it's designed and developed. I think they really just absolutely nailed the multiplayer here. It feels near perfect. I'm having a great time. I cannot get enough of this multiplayer. I am thoroughly enjoying what they've created here. And I can't wait to see how this changes over time, as again, this is going to be like the first 2-year COD game in forever, and it's going to be wild. So aside from just playing in the first person, like I had kind of teased or mentioned earlier in the campaign portion, if you watch that, this has a third person mode. And some of the different modes kind of choose, like if you do co-op, you can be like, you can pick first or third. But, you know, there's different playlists, so there's like a third person playlist, and I love it. It feels really, really good. And it's just neat to have that sort of mode return, because if you didn't know, that mode was originally in the Modern Warfare 2, the original one back in the day. You had a third person team tactical, which was fun. So it's neat to see that option return, and it's actually pretty cool. I know COD is all about first person action, you know, it's an FPS at its core, at its heart. But I think it is worth trying the third person mode because you might like it like I do. It's actually pretty cool. And it's like a mosh pit playlist. We'll see if they expand it over time or what happens to it. But it's pretty neat that that is an option that is present within the game. And while we've shown off this map, which I don't think really highlights just how intensive the multiplayer can be because it's like a little bit more of an open area, the maps are really well designed. They flow well. The objective playlists and the regular playlists that are present in this game are fantastic. I love the new search and rescue. I think it's so good. Or hostage rescue, so whatever it is. That one I just really, really enjoy. But I think they've put together a very, very compelling multiplayer that you can sit and play and play and play and play. And as long as they continue, you know, adding to this, expanding the scope of this with a different, like, you know, it's got so many cool kill streaks, it's got so many cool different ways you can play it. The gameplay just feels action-packed, it feels exciting. I can't wait to see where this goes and what they continue to do with it down the road, because it's so good. Like, it really is just like a peak multiplayer element, and we'll have to see long-term if this does end up becoming like the best COD for multiplayer, like, ever. And I think it actually, for the first time, you know, in years and years and years, it has that potential. Like, this takes the 2019 Modern Warfare and just like completely steps it up in like almost every category for action. It's just near perfect for multiplayer action. So we're here with the 120 hertz option. Obviously, it's quite a dip down to 1080p. Keep in mind, YouTube doesn't support 120 FPS, can't record 120 FPS. But I am playing and recording and showing that off, as you can see from the graphics option, where we have the 120 FPS option locked onto on. So yeah, it obviously feels a lot better. Like I said, we're probably getting 90-ish FPS, so it's not necessarily perfect 120 on here. It does look really, really murky and sort of unclear, but that being said, playing at 120 FPS is like the way to go if you can in games. It feels a lot better, but yeah, you're gonna have to talk about graphic quality sacrifice in comparison to getting those frames for the Series S version.